everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. This week I'm going to be taking a break from the light up skirt ball gown project. We will get back to that later. And I am actually returning to what is giving me the most happiness right now, which is American Girl cosplay. So I did mention that this project would be coming up soon. I just thought that it would be, after I finished the ball gown. But I have decided that I need happy projects right now. So I am turning to Samantha's middy dress, her sailor dress. I thought that this would be such a fun dress for summer, despite the long sleeves, and I think that it will also be really fun to wear this to Comic-Con along with the Kirsten dress that I made a couple weeks ago. If you have not seen the videos on the Kirsten project, I will link them down below in the description so that you can check those out. I am absolutely thrilled with how the Kirsten project came out, so I'm really excited to dive into this Samantha project as well, especially since my other Samantha project, the cloak that I made during the winter, would be way too warm to wear to an August Comic-Con. If you do want to see that project though, I will link those videos down below as well. So today is the middy dress. This is going to be made out of cotton twill, and I already have that cotton twill. It is just from Joann's, so nice and easy. And I actually already have the bodice lining cut out as well. I went and cut that out at the same time that I cut out the Kirsten bodice. Now this isn't going to be an exact cosplay because I don't want to wear a drop waist. That would be super, super unflattering on me. So I'm going to bring that waist up to my natural waist, and it will probably honestly be a little bit more like 1950s style, 1940s style than it will be 19aughts. But I think that for the sake of flattery, it will work. So I'm going to be starting by making the bodice, and I'm also going to be making this attached twill skirt. Now the interesting thing that I find about her skirt, if this will focus on this bright color, is that although these look like pleats, they're actually pleats that are stitched on the edge to retain that pleating shape. So I'm excited to give that a try. I haven't done that before. And then of course we have the middy collar with the little tapes on it as well, and also the little tie in the back with the grommets. Now, for some reason I thought these were navy, and I went to Joann's yesterday and looked for navy tapes and couldn't find any, then got home and realized they're black. So I'm gonna have to go back to Joann's to find black tape because they did have black, and that should be just fine. I will of course be making the hat as well, and I'm going to be purchasing the same exact wig that I got for Kirsten, except in brunette, off of Amazon. So I will link that wig down below. You will see it, if not later in this video. Well, I might make this whole thing this video. We'll see if this is going to be a 1 video project or a 2 video project. But I'm very, very excited. So I'm going to go ahead and use these cotton pieces to cut out the cotton twill and get started on sewing the bodice. While Sewing Rebecca works on cutting out the fabric, let's go over to Sponsor Rebecca for a word from today's sponsor. Thanks, Samantha. Sponsor Rebecca here, and today's video is once again kindly sponsored by Skillshare. Now, I've talked about Skillshare quite a lot on this channel, but if you haven't yet heard of them, Skillshare is an online learning community for creative and curious people. On Skillshare, you can find thousands of inspiring classes on topics including art, embroidery, digital marketing, and even cooking. Now, what I didn't realize until quite recently is that you can even learn languages on Skillshare. I'm on something like a 112-day streak learning German on Duolingo, but frankly, I feel like I still don't know anything from using that app. So when I found all of the German classes that are taught by Angelika Davy on Skillshare, which not only cover a lot of the basic phrases and words, but also why things are like they are in German, such as punctuation, grammar, or word order, I was so excited. I've taken a couple of her classes so far already, and they are making German make so much more sense in just those short classes. I can't wait to take all of her other library of classes. I love that Skillshare classes come in all sorts of different lengths too, so you can really find the classes that fit your schedule. And it's really easy to pause, rewind, or rewatch classes as often as you like. Plus, you can save classes that you want to take in the future to your profile so that you can always come back and watch those classes later. And the great news is that the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link down in the description box below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare so that you can explore your limitless creativity. And now, back to Sewing Rebecca. Thank you, sponsor Rebecca. So I have now cut out the 3 bodice pieces and the 2 skirt pieces. I did my scaling up math to determine how many skirt panels I would need, and I found that actually 2 widths of the twill is 60 inches wide, 2 widths would be just about perfect for my skirt, because her skirt would wind up equaling 110 inches total. So mine will be about 118 after seam allowance. So that's going to be just perfect. So what I've done already is I've actually taken the skirt panels over here. I wanted to play with them just being straight rectangular panels, because sometimes pleated skirts are just rectangles and sometimes they are gored slightly. So before I made any decisions, I wanted to play with making them with rectangles, and I've gone and I've pleated up the front panel of the skirt over here on the form. The pleats are 2.5 inches apart, and then they're 2 inches deep. That first center pleat, it's 6 inches total, that box pleat. And I think that that looks really, really good. So I'm gonna do the same thing for the back. I think the pleats are the same. I haven't really checked her skirt yet, but I think the pleats are the same on the back, except of course that the back panel does have eyelets to be able to lace it. There's decorative lacing. And she has a back closure on her whole outfit, including the sailor collar. I really don't want to divide up that sailor collar, so my plan is to hopefully not need a closure. Sometimes this works, sometimes this doesn't. Frankly, she also does have a very, very high neckline on her sailor collar, and I would rather not have that. That would require me to have some sort of a closure, but I think what would look more flattering is the V of the sailor collar and then the back collar being more like here, which I think should allow me to get it on over my head. Hopefully. I think we'll have to see. Otherwise, one of the things that I could also do is this center V front in the bodice. It's actually cut separately from the bodice. So the bodice has a V, and then there's like an inset piece right here. So I could also make it detachable on one side and have like snaps there, because that would allow me the headroom to get it on over my head and not have to worry about the closure. The other thing that I'm planning to do differently with this outfit is for Kirsten. You might remember that I took what was a darted bodice and turned it into a fake princess seamed bodice. Like I basically seamed up the bodice even though it was cut all in one piece. With this one, what I'm planning to do, I have an inner layer and then I have the outer layer of the twill, which is kind of reverse. It's inner sateen, cotton sateen, and then outer twill. And what I kind of want to do, I want to try this. I'm not gonna say for sure this is what's going to happen, but what I want to try is to actually gather into the waistband instead of darting. So it will still have darts here for the bust shaping, but then it'll be slightly gathered here instead of darting, because I think that that will give it kind of that like blouson effect while still fitting it into the waistband. Actually, that's kind of, is that what's going on in here? Yeah, that is literally what's going on in this dress right here. This has an elastic waist, and so it is gathering itself into the waistband with no darts. So that's really funny. This is an eShakti dress, by the way. I got this last year. Just FYI, eShakti are having a deal right now if you like dresses like this. I love eShakti dresses. If you've never heard of them, I highly, highly recommend. You can customize them and everything. And right now they're giving you $50 off your first purchase. So just in case you're interested in something like that, I'll leave a link to that below. But back to Samantha. So yeah, I'm thinking I'm gonna try it as a gathered bodice and see what that looks like. And then if it sucks, I will make it darted and or hopefully not princess seamed. I really don't want to do princess seams on this, but I literally cut out the cotton sateen of this while making Kirsten, and then I cut out the cotton twill from that. So we'll see how this goes, but this is a much looser fit bodice overall because hers is a drop waist, like loose fit, not fitted bodice. So I'm feeling pretty good about everything so far. I am going to test the bodice pieces and try that on tomorrow. And then I'm also tonight gonna go ahead and finish up the back pleating of this skirt. The skirt will have side seams, and of course it will have pockets in those side seams as well. And then assuming that I don't need any sort of closure at the waist, it will just be all sewn to the waist. So hopefully that will work. If not, I'll probably have to add, I don't know, maybe like a side zip or something. That would probably be like the best, if I do need some sort of closure, is to do snaps on this panel here and then a side zip, but fingers crossed that I don't need any sort of closures at all. Since I liked the pleating pattern of the skirt, I decided I would go ahead and put the front and back panels together with the pockets, and then I would also baste the pleats in place. So that is all done. This is ready to be set to the bodice now. It does need like a serged edge up here because I did all of that pleating onto the form before I had actually serged it, but the sides are selvage, so that's fine, and then the hem will need to be turned once everything is all connected as well. So now it's time to try on the bodice. I've got the skirt on and the bodice-ish on. This is just my trial of the bodice, so it is just the twill layer, though to be honest, I'm really wondering if I even need the lining layer at all. I'm kind of thinking I don't, particularly because this is for summer and this is already twill. I kind of don't think I need to line it. So my darts are not great. They need to have stopped farther out. They're very pointy and weird, which I've just had a pointy dart problem lately apparently. So I do need to fix the darts, but down here I've got this gathered. I didn't actually pull up the gathering threads in the back, but that will be slightly gathered as well, less so than the front. And I really like the look of this. It's giving me like tennis dress vibes, which I think are the right vibes also for a midi dress, especially since I'm, you know, interpreting this one, but it will end at my natural waist there. I think that that's great. I need to take the neckline down further because this will get filled in like up to here, but even once this is cut away for, you know, binding or hem or whatever, this is still going to be too high. So I think this needs to come down to probably about here. So I'm just going to make a little mark 1/2 inch up from there because that's where then it will have like the binding from there. So yeah, that'll come down and come open further as well because right now it's very close and it needs to cut away more there. So that'll be fine. But yeah, everything else is feeling pretty good. So just gotta fix the darts, and yeah, I think I'm gonna just toss out the lining because it's summer. I don't want more layers to this. I think this will be just fine. I mean, it's already long sleeves, like, and also this way everything will be the same thickness. So the skirt will be the same, sleeves will be the same, bodice will be the same. I think that will probably be good. I'll double check that like you can't see the camisole and stuff that I'm wearing. I can't tell from here, so I'll double check in the mirror. If I can, then I'll go ahead and line it, and the lining will probably, I was gonna do it fitted, but you know what, like I feel like it's not super gathered. I think I could do the lining gathered as well and then just treat this like flat lining. So yeah, if I do the lining, I'll let you know, but at this point I'm kind of hoping not to. But I'm glad that the bodice otherwise is a go. I'll just fix those darts, fix the neckline, and I think I'll be good. The neckline is good now. I really like where that brought it down to. I took the darts out a little bit, like the points of the darts. I still think they look awful, so I don't know. But the other thing is that I have decided that I do need the lining because you can see like where my camisole is, and I don't want that. So I am gonna go ahead and line it with the cotton sateen, just flat lining it and then like gathering them both up together, and hopefully that will do better. And then I will worry about the darts in that version because obviously I'm gonna have more fabric to dart and yeah, all that. So anyway, this is all good. I did also, because the darts were in a different place than when I had taken the pattern from, which if you remember with Kirsten, those darts wound up being totally wrong anyway, but because they were in the wrong place, I had a little bit of excess fabric here that I wound up cutting out, just like a 1/2 inch here and then tapering it down to underneath the arm. But yeah, everything is good now with the mini dress part. The skirt, by the way, is just perfect, like excellent. I'm actually kind of debating if I am going to stitch on the very edges of the pleats because I feel like when I was looking in the mirror at the hem, that by the time it gets to the hem, it really does open up all the way, and hers does too, but hers I feel like looks weird to have that little like pleat edge stitch by the time it gets down to the bottom because the pleat has opened up just into the fullness. So I think I might not worry about that at all. Maybe I'll do like just the tops here. I could do that and then stop, so we'll see. And I also did pick out my buttons for the center front. I have all these like vintage buttons that I got from a friend, and I happen to have 4 that look like that. So I thought that was pretty perfect for her buttons. And the anchor and the like insignia on the side, I'm going back and forth between trying to plug in my old computer, which has my Brother PE design in it that runs off of a CD, and therefore I have to use the old computer, but the old computer has a loose power cord and can't keep power, and so if it jiggles at all, the entire thing shuts off. So I'm debating about attempting to do all of that and actually digitizing like an exact things. I've already made a vector file of it, so I might do that, or I will just go with kind of a close representation that I can find on Etsy, because I did already find one on Etsy for just a few dollars, so that might be way better and way less of a headache than trying to deal with the old computer. I probably need to just get new software for my new computer that I can use nowadays that isn't from 2013, because that's when mine is from. But yeah, I do embroidery so infrequently, and usually when I do use embroidery, it's like pre-done designs, and I'm not trying to do an exact cosplay embroidery like I used to with like Princess Anna or something like that. So anyway, I am going to take this all apart and redo it with the lining, serging all the edges, etc. by flatlining, put it all back together, and then I think the next thing will probably be either figuring out the collar or the sleeves. By the way, this can all go on over my head, so that's super dandy. And I will probably just do the snap bit for this neckline filler part in here. I might even debating about even having it snap both sides, because if I could do that, if it's really hot, I could just like take it off and get some air in my chest, because this is where I retain heat kind of the most, and that way I could just, you know, get that coolness in right here if I need to. So I'm gonna go get to sewing, and I will probably check back in with you tomorrow when I have the bodice all together. So one of the things that I remembered is that I had this pattern right here, which is for sailor blouses. You can see like the back of it right there. This is Simplicity 8160, and it has the sailor collar, and this is honestly pretty much the sleeve that is on my Samantha as well. So I'm using this sleeve and I'm using this collar, but of course I'm not using the bodice, so I have to check to make some modifications. Now somehow I went and looked at the back here, and the back of this pattern, it's literally a match. Like what? How? I don't get it. So the good news is that this curve, that's gonna work. However, I went and I looked at the bodice front under here compared with the bodice front here, and we are 1 3/8 inches short. You can see up there, we're so short. And so in this collar pattern, I have to add 1 3/8 inches in this length over here. That shouldn't be too hard. I'm just gonna like split it and spread it out. I think that the back looks pretty good, so that should be good. I will probably wind up sizing this up also to a size 24, just because that is usually what I am in a pattern. So I'll double check, but probably I'll wind up making this just a little bit bigger. Well, I guess it was a match back here, so maybe I don't need to make it bigger here, but I might make it wider here, though then again I have narrow shoulders, so we'll see. We'll play with it and see how it goes. But yeah, this is the collar pattern that I'm using. The sleeve will probably also need some adjustment when we get there. I don't know what I used this pattern for, but I have clearly used the bodice and the sleeve for something. Heck, maybe you know what I used it for, but I don't remember. And it has some markings on there. I'm probably gonna use some of them, like widening the sleeve head up here because it's very vertical. But another one was like add 5.5 inches length. But I'm doing a cuff on this, which I had not done before, but I'm using the cuff from the pattern right here, and that will add quite a bit of length. Not to mention, like, Samantha's sleeves actually are not quite long enough for her. So I don't know if I want to mimic that or if I want to go all the way to the wrist. We'll see how that goes. But I held this up to my arm, and it looks like we're actually just about there once we factor in the cuff as well. So again, we'll see that later when we get to it, because right now we're working on the bodice, but I wanted to check the bodice while it was still flat and not put together for the collar. So I'm glad I did. Now I know the adjustments I needed to make to the collar, and now I can finish putting the bodice together. So it looks like in adding my 1 3/8 inches, I actually added too much, because so this little pink mark, this should be like where it comes to the center basically. And as you might be able to see by here, mine is too long. The collar is too long past here. So I think all I need to do is actually just like cut off and then cut down some of this, and hopefully the rest of that will work. So I'm gonna give that a try. I'm trying to check if it is like the right sort of fit now that I've cut that excess off. It's doing this bubbly thing here in the back, and I feel like that probably shouldn't be happening because it means that it's not sitting right with the part underneath. So I think I'm going to release the pins in the back and just kind of let it slide up to where it wants to be and then cut off that excess. Okay, I didn't think about in doing that how it would actually become like larger than the bottom, so now I'm not sure. I might have to examine this again some other way. So I'm having a really hard time understanding right now how it can possibly be this much of an overlap in this pattern. Now the pattern, like this pattern, calls for a facing that winds up getting stitched and then turned to the inside. But even still, like this dot is just so freaking low. I don't really get it. Like I would think we want to go to about like 5/8 of an inch down or something like that. Like that would make sense, kind of ending it where my finger is right here. But all the way down here, I'm really torn right now on whether I want to trust this pattern, this simplicity pattern, or trust my gut, which is telling me cut more of this off. I am not planning to do the facing. I was planning to do binding, which is narrower like seam allowance, because the facing would be a 5/8 inch seam allowance that would be taken away. But even with a 5/8 inch seam allowance, we're talking to here. Like I don't get it. I do not understand how this is possibly supposed to fit. And the thing is that the collar first, I'll need to cut out another piece of this collar, and then put them right sides together. Then ideally apply the trim, except that I have one trim option here, and the other one's getting here tomorrow, and I don't know if I'm going to love either, if I'm going to need to go to Joann's, but that's the thing. Like once I have that all done, it's going to be a pain to go back in there and remove the excess, because I have a feeling this should end here and should be narrower like that there. And I don't know, but I also feel like maybe I should just trust this pattern and not trust my gut of why is this so freaking big. I've decided to do a little compromise. So first off, I saw where the center was. I drew that in. I drew in about 3/8 inch down from this edge because mine's going to be bias tape, and that's usually like 1/4 or 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I drew that in here. So that's what those two are. And then I came up with this line here, which was just the shortening of this line, but I was like, maybe that's too short. I got this one because this was a 1/2 inch down from this center point here. And so that would be 1/2 inch seam allowance of the collar, like out here. So I was like, that might be too short. So I think I'm going to do here and cut it there and cut it here and like taper this back out. I do worry about it being really too narrow, but I guess I can always recut it because this just makes more sense to me. And then I will go ahead. Oh, by the way, I don't think I even showed you, but I did slide this up. It wound up actually working out fine. It wasn't too much extra or anything like that. So I have to cut off the excess. You can see the edge of it there. But once I cut that and this, then I will cut a second one and put them together. Not do the trimming on it yet. I was trying to examine the inside of her collar point here. Don't worry, she's fully clothed. She's wearing her undergarments. But yeah, so that's why she looks weird. But I won't do the trim yet here because I am not sure about it yet. I'm not sure, you know, I don't have it yet. And I will at least do this and try to put it on, see how it goes. That way I could always undo just where the trim meets in up here or down here, and then put the rest of the trim on. The rest is fine. It's just in here where it goes into the seam allowance that really I would need to do the trim like before I had the collar. But hopefully this will work, and I guess we shall see. So I went ahead and basted the collar now that it's like finished or semi-finished onto the neckline, and there is just no way. There's no way that this overlap can work. And remember, this is a much smaller overlap than I had before, but there's just no way because this part up here, this folds in, but like the collar doesn't go anywhere. And yes, it will be clipped down a little, but not enough for that to go. I think I'm going to have to clip it down farther. That's probably the answer. I'm going to have to clip it down enough for these ends to basically like tuck in. Because otherwise, I don't know. I guess maybe I'll unpick this and just like tuck them in literally onto the inside of the collar. I'll pick out the serging because it makes zero sense to me. So last night after I put the collar on, I also went ahead, excuse you? It's crazy. Anyway, what I was saying was last night after I put the collar on, I also went ahead and put the skirt on, meaning I pulled up the gathering stitches. Excuse me, I'm trying to talk. I pulled up the gathering stitches on the bodice front and back and matched it with the skirt that I had already pleated in place, and I had already basted the skirt. I also did serge the skirt before I did that, and I am so happy with how it went together. I think it just looks perfect. It hits right at the natural waist and yet still gives that kind of full effect like hers, so I really, really like that. The collar is also laying beautifully. Like, the shape is perfect. Oh, that was the other thing. So when I went and I cut down the length of the collar, I actually also cut down the width. I think I wound up cutting off at least 3/4 of an inch, if not up to a full inch off around the entire neckline, because I realized the other thing was that it went way off my shoulders. Now hers goes to a little bit past where the seam line is. Mine is obviously a lot farther off from where the seam line is, because the seam will be 1/2 inch up from here, but I think that this is a good shape for a sailor collar, so I'm good with that. And this looks more like where the pattern was, except of course I wound up cutting off a lot of that, but I think that is because the Simplicity patterns always do have wider shoulders than I do. So hopefully once I cut down this little bit right here in the center, I'll be able to tuck those ends in and get rid of that, because otherwise I do really, really like the collar. The other trim has not yet arrived, but it's supposed to today, so I'll be able to determine what goes on there. I also somehow missed that she also has a star embroidery on the corners, so I have 3 different embroideries I need to do. One of them needs to happen twice, which is anchor, 2 small stars, and then 1 insignia. So I think I'm going to work on some of that today. I'm gonna pull out my old laptop and just see if I can do it like quickly. Otherwise, I'm just gonna buy the ones that are similar off of Etsy and call it good, because I don't want to stress too much about messing with digitizing and all of that. But luckily this machine is embroidery and sewing, so that should be dandy. I'm like crouching down to talk to you because I was trying to show you a full length and my room's too small. So anyway, I'm gonna stop doing the sorority squat, and I think the next thing I'm gonna do is actually hem the skirt since I have it on now. It should be an even hem all the way around. I know you can't see this, it's out of frame, but I'm going to go ahead and hem it because that'll be nice and easy. Of course, the one other thing, and I'm not sure how much it's showing up on camera, but I looked in the mirror just now and realized that this is still so freaking pointy. I moved it back even more, but I think as I'm moving it back, it's also somehow like moving up and away from my bust point. I feel like it probably just needed to be lower, but the thing is that twill does scar. Like when you sew on it, it does scar. So if I completely change the angle, I'm probably gonna see the old ones anyway, so I don't even know, but they look awful, so I've got to do something. So I lowered the darts completely. Like I moved the point down by about 1 1/4 inches, and I moved where it meets in the arm's eye also down a little bit. You can see some of the scarring, but I don't think it's too bad. And I do still think that it needs to get tapered in just a little bit, but it's so much better than it was. Like I don't think they're super obvious. It could even go away with just maybe a press, but I think a little bit more taper, like make them go a little bit farther in, would probably make them perfect. So I'm very, very happy with that. I'm glad that that worked out. I've also put the hem in, so that is great. So now I think I'll go ahead and I'm gonna do the buttons next. I think I'm just gonna sew on the buttons to the skirt portion right in here, and then I think I will go ahead and do a sleeve mock-up. Yeah, I feel like I'm trying to do everything that I can before the trim gets here. I don't want to do the binding on the neckline before the trim because I may have to undo this little bit down here to get the trim on. So yeah, otherwise I would totally do the binding next, but I think buttons will be a good idea. And maybe I'll test out that embroidery. So 2 other things. I have decided that I am going to stitch down the edges of the pleats, but only to about here, and then the rest of them can be loose. So I'm just gonna do a stitch like almost right on the edge, like 1/8 of an inch or less from the edge down to here on all of the pleats, and that will just keep them staying nice and crisp up at the top. The other thing that I almost forgot are the grommets that lace up the back here. So I've pinned them to where I think they need to go, like down to about here. Hers has 3 grommets. I feel like that's still a good spacing on mine for the three sets of grommets. The one thing is I don't have white grommets. I have silver grommets. So I think I'm going to wait and kind of decide, am I actually going to Joann's today? In which case I will look to see if they have white grommets. If that doesn't happen, I really don't want to run to Joann's just for 6 grommets, so I'll probably do machine eyelets instead if I don't wind up needing to run to Joann's for the trim, the black trim for everything. So yeah, that is my plan. So instead of doing the sleeves next, because I'm like dying of heat in here, I'm so sweaty, I really need to set up my air conditioner. But instead of doing the sleeves at the moment, I am going to stitch all of these down, and I have also marked, that's what the pink dots are here. I don't know if you can see those, but I've marked where the buttons go here, so I need to measure them and make them equal on this side as well, and then I can sew them on. So hopefully you can hear me over the sound of the machine, but I am doing a test out of the embroidery right now. I feel like this is gonna go really weirdly. Right now it is stitching out this first design right here, this one. So this I digitized, and I did it by going on Canva and putting the image together on Canva, which is a monthly subscription program. It's how I make all my thumbnails and stuff too. I'll link to it down below if you're interested. And so I put that together on Canva, and then I put it into my super old computer from 2010 and did Brother PE Design Next, I think is what the old software was called. And I made it into this embroidery, but I don't know how it's going to stitch out, so that is what we are testing right here. Again, I apologize for the extra sound of the machine. And then these designs here, the stars and this anchor, these were actually built into Brother PE Design Next, and I just then put them on my USB because these all work on a USB drive here. And then I arranged these all into the same program here that I just did on my machine itself. And I put them all on the same to test them all out at the same time. This one will be a patch style, so it will have fabric in the background and on black fabric, and it's being done with white. And then these are both in black with nothing in the background, and I'm just going to like then stitch them onto the outfit. That was my plan. So we will see here how this goes. So one more thing, I used the photo stitch program on PE Design Next to do this, and it is doing like the most impractical back and forth of this. Like it's doing every little leaf individually from these laurel leaves right here, and that is so silly because these are all connected, and so it could all do that as one and then finally tie off the thread and do the circle and then do the anchor. But no, it's not doing it that way. So I'll check back in 15 minutes when this is all done. So it is actually looking pretty darn fantastic. It's just doing the very last piece right now. And yeah, I'm very happy with this. If this works out to the right size, I'm just gonna go ahead and use this test stitch out right here. So just a little update on this second stitch out here, which is the star. Now when you're doing machine embroidery, you have special bobbin thread that is really thin, but I only have it in white. It may come in black, I only have it in white. And as you can see on this one, there's all those little white threads sticking up. That is the bobbin thread that's coming up from the bottom. So on this one, I'm trying it with regular thread in the bobbin, like regular black thread. I don't know if it's gonna work. I've never really tried that before, I don't think, but I think you can already tell it's looking a lot nicer on the edges. The other thing that I don't know that I love about this star, if it will focus as it moves, is that it has kind of an outline around it. I just don't know if I love that look, but I'm gonna let this second one stitch out with the outline as well. Here are the finished embroideries. One thing that I should have done that I just forgot to do was that my machine will actually put like a satin stitch and edge off the fabric of an applique, and I totally should have done that, but it would have meant that I would have had to do it separately from these guys, like in a separate hoop, because then basically what it does is it does a straight stitch around, then you cut off past that straight stitch, and then it does a satin stitch over the straight stitch, and it finishes off your edges. So what I've just done right now is I've just cut a large circle. I will cut this down more because this is going to be way too big right now. I'm honestly worried it's going to be too big for my arm anyway. It is quite large, but look at the resemblance there. Very, very happy with how that turned out. And then we have the anchor right here, which is cut out really nicely too. I cut it out and then I put fray check all along the outside. So I did leave a little bit of fabric, particularly on this one, because these are actually super, super wide satin stitches that go across. I don't love that in an embroidery design because that means if one gets undone, the whole thing just unravels. And then the stars look really nice as well. Again, they've got some stray little threads, but I think that will be okay. And I did fray check them, so I might be able to just trim those off. So these are for the collar. You can see that she's got her little stars back there, and then this obviously for the center. So over here we have the other trim option that arrived, which is just a 1/2 inch grosgrain. Now I really, really like the look of this grosgrain. This is a nice grosgrain. This isn't like Joann's grosgrain, but it is too wide. I really do prefer the 3/8 inch. This is actually middy braid, so I think this is like what you're supposed to use. A little bit peeved. I ordered this on Amazon. It was 5 yards. It was actually 4 yards and 34.5 inches. So it was not 5 yards. A little peeved about that. Luckily, to do the collar and the cuffs, I don't need a full 5 yards. However, I was hoping to also use the same stuff as the tie in the back, and I feel like I'm gonna need more than, you know, most of a yard. Basically, I think I need about 4 1/8 yards to do the collar and the cuffs, and then I'll have that little bit left over. So yeah, I think I am gonna stick with this and return the grosgrain. I had debated about going to Joann's and then I took a nap instead, but I do really like the quality of this, and this is, again, like literally what you were supposed to use. Sorry, I know it's black so you can't see it very well, but yeah, this looks pretty good. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and start applying this to the collar. Oh my gosh, it looks so good with the collar trimming on. I have the stars on. I just sewed around the outside edges of them, and then I have the 2 rows of the braid, and I sewed on either side of the braid here. But at the same time, I also now have 2 spots on this dress. There's one right here, which I'm worried is sewing machine grease because I was working on putting the stars on, and then all of a sudden this spot showed up. And there's one on the front edge of the collar, like right on the edge, that I'm worried is makeup. So now I have to go try and get those spots out and figure out why they're there, and also make sure that this white outfit stops getting more spots. Thankfully, both spots appear to be out. I have to wait for this one to dry, both of them to dry, but I used a little shampoo and it seems to have come right out, which is great. And look how cute it looks with Samantha right above it. So tomorrow I'm going to bind the neckline, and if I get to sleeves, great. If not, that might be next week. So I'm trying to figure this out right now. This is the front of the neckline. I'm about to do the binding, and I am just really struggling with this right now because, like, I can't just, this one's already sewn down. I can't just sew this down on top and meet this little pink point right here that I'm pointing to. I can't meet that and then bind it because this it's gonna get stuck and you won't be able to fold in. That has to fold in. So I'm kind of thinking, now that I have this one done, do I slash this down to this point, this being the underside right here, do I slash this down to this point and then turn this inside so that this little tail can get away and go out of the way, and then put this down, which would mean that I would have to do some binding over this already, I think, and have maybe a tail of the binding hanging out. I'm really not sure. And then I could fold the binding in like that. Now, the original pattern did call for facing, not binding, but there should not be a difference other than the fact that with binding, I can make it so I don't have a join here, which I feel like might be helpful, versus facing, obviously, it would have a join here. I don't know why this is confusing me. I don't know why this is complicated. I don't know why this overlap is happening, and maybe it's not supposed to be happening. So, and of course, all of this involves actually cutting the front of my bodice to even figure out how this works at all. So I think I'm gonna cut it down like a tiny bit until I can get this to fold in, figure out what that point is, and then put binding on, and then put the binding on for this side, and do it all the way around to like here, and then figure out how to put this down, lay this down. I don't know, wish me luck. I've now cut it down to this point right here, which was the point that the seam allowance met, like 3/8 inch seam allowance, and I just slashed the fabric, you can see the cut edge right there, down to there, and then I sort of like maneuvered the point back right here and pinch to fold, and it looks like it's doing it correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and hope that this method actually works. I'm going to try and put some binding bias tape down on here, and then once I get to over here, I can sew this down as well. So yeah, I think that's going to work. This is it just folded down right now with the bias tape on the back. I haven't like even pressed it or anything yet, but it is there. I'll cut off any excess that I don't need, but the outside looks like a really nice little neat join. And now that it's stitched down, this is what it looks like from the inside. And then again, the outside, like I showed you before. So here is where we are currently with the neckline all bound up and all of my nice stripes and the stars put on in the back. Honestly, like this would make such a cute summer dress on its own, you know, if I did not hate wearing sleeveless, but this would make a super, super cute summer dress. And yeah, I'm almost sad that there's going to be long sleeves put on here. I'm sure it will make a lovely spring or fall dress as well, but I don't tend to do long sleeves in the summer. Like a little short sleeve would be adorable on this, and who knows, maybe I will make it so they can easily be changed out. It's a possibility. I could do that, who knows? But yeah, I'm really loving this so far. I do really like the stitching that I did on the edge of the pleats. I think that looks nice. The buttons look very, very cute, and this is great. So very, very happy with this first week's progress. There won't be too much to do next week. Next week, I'm going to be making the hat for one thing. So that's a whole kind of separate piece that I need to do. Obviously, I need the sleeves. I need to make the inset for the neckline, and that's going to snap in on both sides and come up to probably about here and have the anchor insignia put onto it. And then I need to do the either grommets or eyelets. I'm still not sure which one. Depends on if I make a trip to Joann's or not. But that will be on the back with the little lacing on the back. And I think that is it for everything. So yeah, super excited with where this is heading, and I cannot wait to finish it and show you the final at the end of the next video. One thing that I do want to mention this video, if you've made it this far, is that I am actually putting that embroidery insignia that I digitized, like the one that I made myself, I'm going to be putting that on my Etsy store. So I will have the link to that down in the description below. Right now it is just in the brother format, which is .pes, I think, but please send me a DM or leave a comment or something like that if it's something that you want to purchase that is not in the file type that you have. I can convert it into other files, other sizes, etc. So let me know. But if you liked this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I post videos here on YouTube once a week with my sewing vlogs out every Tuesday, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon, Julie, and Mirage. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!